Hi, I'm Marisa Gares from Underground Crafter, and welcome to the first part of the Picnic Basket Shawl Crochet-a-long. In today's episode, we will get started and work our way through row 3. So a couple things you should know if you're just joining in. You'll need about 770 yards of sock yarn to get started, and I used, for the sample, I used Malabrigo sock, and it used about 1 2/3 skeins, so roughly 2 skeins. Your shawl might be bigger or smaller, so you might need a little bit more yarn, but I did add a little bit extra to the estimate because I know that people have different size crochet stitches. So you'll also need a crochet hook, and I recommend a size E, but of course again based on the size of your stitches. What you want is not something too tight because we're trying to make a shawl that has a little bit of lace in it. So the best way to do that is to not be too tight with our stitches. Whatever size works for you, you might go up to a G or an H, or if you are a loose stitcher, you might even go down a little bit to a D or a C. And I'm going to give you the stitch multiples. What that means is you'll be able to create a shawl that's longer or shorter than mine by adding or taking away more stitches from the foundation chain. So are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to get started with our chain, and I like to leave a long yarn tail when I'm starting a project that has over 100 chains, and I'll tell you a little bit more why later. But you can see I've left about a foot of yarn tail, and now we're going to chain 254 stitches. You could also choose to chain any multiple of 28 stitches plus 2. So for those of you not familiar with stitch multiples, you're going to chain, any kind of multiple of 28, 28, 56, etc. And then at the very end you would add 2. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And obviously if you add more chains, your project will be longer. And if you have fewer chains, your project will be shorter. But also impacting that are your stitch size. So as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to make a gauge swatch, if you don't want to check your size, you can just make the chain about as long as you want the shawl to be. Once that chain is done, the reason I leave the extra will be clear in a moment. So let's just keep going with that chain. Okay, we've made it to the end of our chain, and we're going to skip 1 stitch and then crochet into the next stitch. Now, most crocheters like to go through the front loop like I just showed, but I like to go to the back bump. And actually, let me move this closer so you can see what I'm talking about. The front loop is on the front side. It looks like a little circle. And the back loop is on the back side of the chain. It looks like a series of little bumps. And the reason I like to do that is it makes the bottom look the same as the top row. So I'm going to just skip 1 and put it in that little bump, and then I'm going to single crochet. And I'm going to single crochet in every stitch across, working through that little bump. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Crochet straight across. You don't have to work into the little bump if you don't want to. You can do your regular single crochet stitches all the way across. When you get to the end of the row, just count to make sure you have the right number of stitches. It should be 1 less than the number of chains you started with. If you don't, here's where that long string comes in handy. You can actually open up that chain and add some more. For more details on that, you can follow the link that I've included above to a photo tutorial on how to do that. Okay, so now we're going to get started with row 2. For row 2, we're going to start with 1 chain and turn, or turn and chain 1. It's really your personal preference. You can turn at the beginning of the row or at the end of the prior row, whatever you prefer. And then we're going to single crochet into the very first stitch. I prefer to go under both loops for lacy type crochet because I think it makes a more durable fabric. So once you have your single crochet, you're going to chain 5. And then you're going to skip 3 stitches and single crochet in the next one. Okay, so basically we're going to repeat that across. Single crochet, chain 5, skip 3, and single crochet in the 4th stitch. And we're going to continue that all the way across this row. Okay, now we're at the end of our row. We're going to single crochet in the last stitch, and what you're going to see is that we're going to have a group of what we call chain 5 spaces. Each of those openings is a chain 5 space. Now we're going to go on to row 3. So we're going to turn, and then we're going to start with 5 chains, and we're going to single crochet in that first chain 5 space. Okay, so just put your hook in there. And then we're going to chain 5 again. We're going to do this 3 times. So we're going to chain 5 and single crochet in the next chain 5 space 3 times. So that's 2, and now one more time. And you see that I'm making my stitches a little bit loose. That's going to help it be nice and lacy. So you're going to have the chain 5 and then hook into the space and single crochet. So that's 3 times that you've done that. At the beginning is going to count as a double crochet in a chain 2 space. Okay, now we're going to make the start of our pineapple. So we're going to double crochet and then chain 1. Now here's a new stitch, a cluster. So we're going to yarn over, put the hook into the chain 5 space, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and draw through 2 loops, so we have 2 left. Now we're going to do that again. Yarn over, insert our hook into the loop, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over through 2. We'll have 3 left, and we're going to yarn over through all 3. Don't worry, I'm going to repeat that. So we'll have a chain in the middle. Now yarn over, insert your hook into the next loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, insert your hook in the next loop, draw up 1, yarn over through 2 loops, and yarn over through all 3. And then chain 1 in between. And we're going to do that one more time. Yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, and yarn over through all 3 loops. And that's our cluster, and then a chain, and then we're going to end with a double crochet. So again, that was a double crochet, a chain 1, and then 3 times cluster, chain 1, and then ending with a double crochet, all in that same chain 5 space. Okay, so now we're going to our next chain 5 space, and we're going to single crochet and then chain 5, and then single crochet in the next chain 5 space, and we're going to do that 5 times. Okay, so once you've finished your 5 repeats of single crochet in the next chain 5 space, chain 5, you're going to single crochet in the next chain 5 space, so you'll really have 6 single crochets. Now we're going to do that funky one again. It's going to be yarn over, or it's going to be double crochet in the next chain 5 space and chain 1. Now our cluster, yarn over, insert your hook in the chain 5 space, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over, insert your hook in the chain 5 space, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, and then yarn over through all 3 loops on your hook and chain 1. We're going to repeat, yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over through 2 loops, and then yarn over through all 3 loops. One more time, yarn over into the hook in the chain 5 space, yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over, drop through 2 loops, and basically we're going to end our cluster with a chain 1 and then a double crochet into the same stitch. We're going to repeat that whole pattern until we have 3 chain 5 loops or chain 5 spaces left, and then we're going to single crochet in the next chain 5 space, chain 5, and we'll do that twice. So single, oops, that was only 3, chain 5, and then we're going to single crochet in the next chain 5 space and chain 5, so that was our second time. And then we're going to end off this row with a single crochet in the next chain 5 space, and then chain 2, and then a double crochet in the very last stitch. Okay, so now what you'll have is a bunch of these groups of chain 5 spaces in between these sort of clustery, pineapple-y ones. And remember, we said at the beginning was like a same as a double crochet in a chain 2 space, and we end with that as well. Okay, so that's the end of row 3. I hope you found that walkthrough of the first 3 rows helpful, and next week we'll be focusing on rows 4 to 6. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Ravelry. I'm Marie in NYC, or on Facebook. I'm Underground Crafter there. And of course, you can always stop by my blog and website, which is undergroundcrafter.com. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you back here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start with is our chain, and I like to leave a long yarn tail when I'm starting a project that has a lot of chain stitches. This particular pattern Okay, so we're going to get started with our chain, and I like to leave a long yarn tail when I'm starting a project that has over 100 chains, and I'll tell you a little bit more why later. But you can see I've left about a foot of yarn tail, and now we're going to chain 254 stitches. You could also choose to chain any multiple of 28 stitches plus 2. So for those of you not familiar with stitch multiples, you're going to chain, any kind of multiple of 28, 28, 56, etc. And then at the very end you would add 2. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And obviously if you add more chains, your project will be longer. And if you have fewer chains, your project will be shorter. But also impacting that are your stitch size. So as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to make a gauge swatch, if you don't want to check your size, you can just make the chain about as long as you want the shawl to be. Once that chain is done, the reason I leave the extra will be clear in a moment. So let's just keep going with that chain.